He was seconds from saying goodbye forever. Tears streamed as he held his dying dog one last time. But when the dog wrapped his paws around him in a final hug, something felt times off asterisk. The vet froze. That simple gesture didn't make sense until she saw what no one else could. It wasn't just emotion, there was strength behind it. A clarity that didn't belong in a body ravaged by cancer. And in that single moment, everything changed. Daniel had carried Max into the clinic like a father holding a sleeping child. Gentle, deliberate, heartbreaking, with every step. 12 years of loyalty, protection, and silent understanding, now reduced to this quiet walk down a sterile hallway. The German shepherd's breathing was shallow, his once bright eyes clouded with pain. Every movement seemed to cost him dearly. This wasn't the dog who used to leap over fences or bark at shadows. This was an old friend on the edge of vanishing. Daniel remembered the first day he brought Max home. A clumsy puppy, tumbling through autumn leaves, tail wagging like a metronome of joy. He remembered nights when grief kept him awake, and Max would press his warm body against Daniel's side, as if sharing strength. Now, he was here to let go, not because he wanted to, but because he promised he wouldn't let Max suffer. The weight of that promise pressed harder than any guilt he'd ever known. The receptionist looked up and immediately lowered her voice. No words were needed. She nodded softly, eyes full of understanding. They'd seen this before. The slow walk to the exam room felt longer than any journey Daniel had ever taken. The air smelled of antiseptic and quiet sorrow. He sat beside Max on the cold floor, stroking the fur that had weathered storms, hikes, and healing silence. Max rested his head on Daniel's knee, one tired eye blinking open. "You've been my best friend," Danielle whispered, voice cracking. "My protector, my peace." A tear fell onto Max's muzzle, and the dog gave the faintest lick in return. It was their language, small gestures, speaking volumes. Outside, life went on. Inside, time had stopped. Then, without warning, Max stirred. With effort that defied his condition, he pushed himself up and leaned forward. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his front paws and wrapped them around Daniel's neck. Not a fall, not a stumble, a hug. A real, intentional embrace. Daniel froze, breath catching in his chest. Then he pulled Max close, arms trembling, as he buried his face in the familiar fur. Sobs racked his body. It felt like forgiveness, like gratitude, like a plea, asterisk. "Don't let me go yet, asterisk." The room fell silent. Even the vet, standing near the counter, paused mid-motion. She had done hundreds of euthanasias. She had seen animals nuzzle, whimper, rest their heads. But this was different. This was purpose. She watched closely, too closely. Max shouldn't have the muscle control to do that. Advanced cancer meant wasting, weakness, collapse. Yet here he was, holding on with surprising stability. His core was engaged. His limbs weren't limp. They were times supporting times his weight. Something clicked In the back of her mind, a whisper of doubt. She crouched beside them, careful not to break the moment. Gently, she ran her hands along Max's spine, then pressed lightly on his abdomen. When she touched a spot just behind his ribs, Max flinched, not with the dull groan of terminal illness, but with a sharp, reactive whimper. Pain, yes, but localized. Specific, not widespread. Her eyes narrowed. She exchanged a quick glance with her assistant. "Wait," she said quietly. "Not yet." Daniel looked up, tears still falling, confusion replacing grief. "What do you mean?" The vet didn't answer right away. She palpated again, pressing gently. Another flinch. Her mind raced. Could this be misdiagnosis? The symptoms, weight loss, lethargy, labored breathing, mimicked late-stage cancer perfectly. But what if it wasn't cancer? What if it was pressure, inflammation, an abscess? When was the last full-body scan? She asked. Daniel wiped his eyes. A few weeks ago. They said it was too far gone. She nodded. We need another look. She stood and called for the portable ultrasound. Daniel's heart pounded. Hope was dangerous. It hurt more than loss. But he couldn't stop it. It rose anyway, quiet and fragile. The machine wheeled in, gel applied. The probe moved across Max's side. The screen flickered with grayscale images, organs, fluids, shadows. The vet adjusted the angle, zoomed in. Then she stopped, held her breath. There it was, a large, well-defined mass, pressing against the diaphragm and liver. But the edges were clean, contained, not the jagged, spreading tendrils of malignancy. It's an abscess, she said, almost to herself. Deep, infected, probably from an old injury we missed. Daniel stared. So, it's not cancer? She turned to him. No, it's serious. It needs surgery. But Max, he has a chance. Daniel's hands shook. Moments ago, he was preparing to say a final goodbye. Now, he was being handed a second chance. Tears came again, but they were different, lighter, warmer, full of disbelief and dawning joy. They prepped Max immediately. The euthanasia kit was quietly removed. The team moved fast, shifting from farewell to emergency care. Daniel bent down one last time, forehead touching Max's. Hang in there, buddy, he whispered. We're not done yet. Max blinked slowly, as if he understood, as if he was waiting. The gurney rolled away, disappearing behind double doors. Daniel sank into a chair, hands clasped, replaying every second. That hug, that strength, how had he not seen it? Weeks ago, Max had limped after stepping on something in the yard. Daniel thought it was arthritis, but now he wondered, had Max been trying to tell him? Had he known something was wrong all along? 2 hours passed like decades. Nurses offered updates, but nothing certain. Daniel paced, sat, stood, prayed. He thought about how close he'd come to ending it all out of love. How one gesture, one moment of connection had changed everything. Finally, the doors opened. The vet walked out, gloves off, face unreadable. Daniel stood, bracing for impact. Then she smiled. We got it all. It was a massive infected pocket. We drained it, cleaned the area. No sign of cancer. Max is stable. Daniel's knees buckled. He covered his face, sobbing freely. Relief poured through him like rain after drought. Joy, guilt, gratitude, all at once. Weeks later, Max was home, weak but healing. His tail thumped at the sound of Daniel's voice. He slept on the couch again, warm and safe. Daniel often sat beside him, hand resting on that familiar back, remembering the hug, the moment that changed everything. Sometimes he believed Max knew that the dog hadn't just been saying goodbye. He'd been fighting, asking for help in the only way he could. And someone finally listened, because sometimes the most broken moments hold the greatest miracles, and sometimes love speaks louder than any test ever could. That hug wasn't just a farewell. It was a signal, a desperate act of communication from a dog who had always protected his person. Even now, in his weakest state, he was trying to stay. He wasn't begging to die. He was asking to live. And because one vet paid attention not just to the charts, but to the moment Max got that chance, it's easy to assume we know the truth from scans and symptoms. But animals don't lie. They show us in their own ways what they need. Max didn't bark. He didn't pull away. He reached out. And in doing so, he reminded everyone in that room that connection can be louder than science. That love can mimic weakness, but sometimes it reveals strength we never expected. Daniel still replays that day in his mind. The heaviness of grief, the sudden shift, the way hope crept in like light through a crack in the door. He thinks about how many times we rush to conclusions, especially when faced with suffering. We want to end pain quickly. We want to be kind. But kindness also means listening, even when the voice is silent, even when the message comes in the form of a paw on a shoulder, a head on a lap, a hug that defies explanation. Max didn't have words, but he had presence, and that presence saved his life. Today, Max walks again, slowly, carefully, but he walks. He chases bulls in the backyard. He barks at squirrels. He sleeps curled beside Daniel, just like he did when he was young. Nothing about him says miracle. He looks like any other aging dog enjoying his golden years. But Daniel knows the truth. He knows how close he came to losing everything. And he knows that the bond they share isn't just emotional, it's instinctive, unbreakable, almost supernatural in its depth. That final hug wasn't just Max saying he loved Daniel. It was Max saying, asterisk, I'm not ready, don't let go, asterisk. And maybe, just maybe, that's the lesson for all of us, to pause, to look closer, to question even the hardest truths when something inside tells us it's not quite right. Because in the quiet moments, in the spaces between words, the ones we love are still speaking. We just have to be still enough to hear them. Max spoke that day, and because someone listened, a family stayed whole. A heart was mended. A story didn't end, it continued. And somewhere out there, another dog is trying to tell their person something important. All they need is someone willing to pay attention.